What's going on, everybody? NFL draft is just about a month away, and today I got my special guest, Adrian Soup Campbell, in the house with us today, and we're going to talk about who is going to be trading up in the draft for round one and who will be trading back in round one for more draft collateral. Adrian, man, we're about to jump into a heavy topic today, man. How you doing today, man?
I'm good, brother. I'll be happier when we get to the draft because right now it's just that waiting period, and I think everybody, if you're a fan of the NFL football, we had a pretty interesting free agency, way more active than we saw last year, right? And now everybody's kind of waiting to see what are their team going to do in the draft, and then we'll see that second tier of free agency come after. So yeah, it's just a waiting game, man. There's nothing really happening right now besides March Madness and stuff. But as good as March Madness is, my bracket's busted. So bring me back to football.
Yes, sir, man. Let's get right on into it, man. We're split this episode up into two bits. Okay, the first part is who will take and be trading up. Okay, in the draft. So we see obviously Bears who can trade up for that number one spot. Who is hungry for it? Is the Commanders? Is it the Patriots? Soup, man, talk to me. And what are your thoughts, man, on this crazy first round we're about to see?
Well, I don't think Chicago's moving off the first round pick. So unless you're prepared to offer just a Godfather type deal, right? And I'm talking a package that includes probably your first round draft pick for the next 4 years, and then some other stuff. I don't see the Chicago moving off. Same thing with Washington. I don't think that they're going to move off the two spot. I don't care what they keep saying. They keep talking like Dan Quinn. They were talking about it at the league meetings today. Like, hey, our phone is ringing. Their GM that's over there, I can't remember his name, the new guy from the 49ers. It's like, yeah, our phone's ringing. We're talking. I was like, I don't think they'll move either. I think there's a possibility because I think New England is undecided on who they want at quarterback, and I think they're actually okay with about 2 to 3 prospects. I could see that being a spot that could be moved up to. I could see the number 4 spot being available and the number 5. So 3 through 5, I think is realistic. The team that I'm almost guaranteeing is going to trade up, like I'm 90% certain they're going to trade up, are the Minnesota Vikings.
Damn!
And we've
Ooh,
well,
okay.
if you've been paying attention to what's been happening since free agency, right? A big thing happened, I want to say last week, and it was kind of quiet, but they did trade with the Texans and acquire the Texans' first round pick this year. So now Minnesota Vikings now hold 2 number 1 picks. I don't think that there's 2 prospects in the first round that they love that much. I think they like the idea of packaging 2 first round picks this year to trade up with somebody in front of them. And while I do believe that Justin Jefferson is going to be a Minnesota Viking, I think there is enough belief in the building in Jordan Addison that depending on what spot they are able to land, right? Say if they're able to land the 3 and it's going to take these 2 plus sending, Justin Jefferson to New England, I think they'd be willing to do that. Now, obviously, New England would have to give something back, probably like a second and a third, because we're pitching Justin Jefferson up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see that happening. But I think their ideal landing spot is probably going to be the number 5
Okay.
because I don't think Arizona is willing to move off the 4. Because if you're assuming that the first 3, right, Carolina, Washington, and New England, let's say they all take a quarterback, who I'll let you decide who's coming off where.
Yeah.
But I think Arizona wants to stand pat, get Kyler a weapon, and I think that's where Marvin Harrison goes, right?
Wow.
He's going to go at 4. I think the Chargers would like to sit there for Marvin Harrison, but if he goes, they'd be able to relinquish the 5 spot. I think they'd be cool with trading back down, getting some more collateral, because unless they're just really sold on like a Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, right? If,
Yeah.
if they're just absolutely sold with one of those two prospects, then I could see them standing pat at 5. But here's where I think it could get interesting. I think Arizona could also stand pat and go with Fashanu or Joe Alt at
Ooh.
and go
Fashanu was
Alt,
dope.
yeah, and get some more protection for Kyler at 4. And I think, like I said, I think the Chargers getting or Minnesota being able to trade up into that 4 or 5 spot depends on what Arizona does or what they're looking at. Like I said, if for some reason Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at 4, and I think he will be, I think they stand pat and grab him. If for some reason they go O line, I think the Chargers will stand pat and
Mhm.
take him there because they need a weapon because they just traded Keenan Allen away to the Bears, right? And they traded and they got rid of Mike Williams. They released him, right? So they need a receiver for Justin Herbert, new head coach there. And that would leave the Giants at 6, who I think are also in for a quarterback, but with arguably probably the top 3 prospects gone, would be willing to trade with Minnesota. So that's a team that I could see trading up. Another team that I could see trading up, and I think is quietly trying to figure out how they're going to do it. We haven't seen them make any moves to acquire any more draft capital. But I think the Las Vegas Raiders are also very interested in trading up, right? Antonio Pierce's first year as a head coach. He's got the former GM from the Chargers, Tom Telesco, in there. Tom Telesco famously drafted Justin Herbert, and he was able to do that after Tua was picked, right? Because Miami decided that Tua was better than Herbert. And so I could see them wanting to trade up and get one of these quarterbacks. Once again, I think it depends on who goes 1 and 2. They'd be willing to send the package that possibly includes Devontae Adams to New England to be able to slide up and get that. Outside of that, I really don't see anybody trading up into the top 5 spots because at that point, you can argue who you think your top 3 quarterbacks are. I think the top 3 quarterbacks coming off the board, and this, by the way, this is not me saying that one is better than that. These 3 are better than the rest. This is what I think the league views as the top 3. I think Caleb at 1 is going to go, and I think 2 is going to be Jaden Daniels. And surprise, surprise, I don't agree with this, but I think J.J. McCarthy has been pegged as the 3. And for anybody that's paying attention, this is what it was today. It's the 25th. It's a Monday, 25th of March on a Monday. League meetings currently happening in Orlando. A lot of the chatter coming out of the league meetings in there is that the Commanders are smitten with J.J. McCarthy. Now, I don't know how much truth there is into that. I think a lot of people liked McCarthy at his pro day, and if you listen to Harbaugh on FS1 when he did a guest spot, he said that he believes J.J. McCarthy is going to be the number 1 overall pick in this draft, and that he thinks he's the best quarterback in this draft. He was at the league meetings today, and they interviewed him, and he has not backed off of that stance. He still believes that J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback, right? But here's the thing, too. I want. And I know we're talking about trading up in the draft, but just stick with me if you will. Who has more motivation for J.J. McCarthy to go higher than Harbaugh? Not because he gets anything for Michigan, right? But if you think about it, if I can raise J.J. McCarthy's stock, and maybe you didn't have J.J. McCarthy in your top 3, right? Maybe your top 3 are Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. And I've heard that Drake May has fallen from grace in a lot of teams' eyes. But let's say that that's your top 3.
Right.
What does he stand to gain by making J.J. McCarthy, top 3, top 4 quarterback in this draft? Well, assuming that the earlier scenario doesn't play out, right, and that Arizona is willing to move off of their pick, the Chargers would have the first non-quarterback pick of this draft. Which, like I said, would land them the top offensive target this year, Marvin Harrison Jr., in LA with Justin Herbert. If you don't think that Harbaugh is playing that game, you don't know Harbaugh. This is the kind of stuff that he does all the time. I'm not convinced that the Commanders are going to go J.J. McCarthy. I think it's a smokescreen.
I got something for you, man. There's a team we didn't get a chance to talk about yet, man. That's the Denver Broncos.
Please say Denver.
Denver, Colorado.
I think Denver is going to trade up. I think they'll be more aggressive. They could potentially be more aggressive than Minnesota. They could be more aggressive than the Raiders, man. Do they really want to risk it? Do they really want to risk it?
Here's the thing that I have.
I got one more thing to add.
Go ahead.
Today, Coach Mayo of the Patriots said there's no guarantee, and he could be playing dummy ball.
Right.
Coaches have been known to take and do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But man, this is a possibility. They could trade up. Somebody could sneak into the number 3 spot. I don't see Commanders moving, and I don't see the Bears moving at all, man. They're like, hey, we're gonna get this right our wrongs, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the Patriots very well can trade back to number 12 or number 11. I don't know. It just seems like a New England Patriot. They'll spoil the moment, man. I see it happening, man. And I think the Broncos, man, I think they're going to pay a king's ransom to get to that number 3 spot, and they're going to get them a franchise quarterback, man.
Well,
that's my big team I have moving.
To throw some more gasoline on what you're saying.
Yeah.
I do think that the Patriots could move. Me personally, I think that it's a smokescreen. But I think of those 3 teams at the top, right? Chicago, Washington, and New England.
Yeah.
Who is the most comfortable with their quarterback situation in the building right now? And it's the New England Patriots with Jacoby Brissett,
That's right.
He's worked with Mayo, right, before as a former Patriot, right? He was on staff. He wasn't the head coach then, but he was on staff. So there's some familiarity with him. I think if you guys were paying attention to Jacoby Brissett last year, when he stepped in, coincidentally, for the Commanders last season, right? He showcased that he is a serviceable quarterback. I think we even saw it in his time, the year before when he was in Cleveland. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was in Cleveland the year before. He was, or definitely, I know he was the QB when Watson was serving his suspension, right? And he had them rolling, right? So over the last few years,
he had them winning, dude. Like they were winning games.
That's what I'm saying. So Jacoby Brissett has shown that he's a serviceable quarterback. You're probably not going to get to a Super Bowl, but you can probably get to a 500, maybe above 500. You can have a decent season with Jacoby Brissett. Yeah. And so I think that New England says, hey, if we miss out on these first tier of quarterbacks, we have a veteran this year that we're comfortable with, that we would be willing to take maybe one of these second. Once again, this is not me saying they're second tier in talent. This is just how I believe the league views them. They're willing to take one of these second tier quarterbacks in the draft. You're talking about a Michael Penix, which his fall from grace has been crazy. A Bo Nix, a Spencer Rattler, right? Like those are I would say that's your next grouping of quarterbacks. And depending on how you rate Drake May, I think the league actually has Drake May at the top of that second tier of quarterback. So it'd be, it would be those 4. I think they feel comfortable. Hey, we could go back down to 12, right?
Yeah.
And one of those guys are still going to be there. Because if you look at the draft order, let's say top 3 picks, regardless of whether New England stays pat or somebody trades up into that spot, right? Minnesota, Denver, Vegas, right? And by the way, Vegas is the 13th pick, so they're right behind Denver. So if one of those 2 don't trade up, right? But either way, if those guys, funny, we should mention it. Minnesota's 11, Denver 12, and then Vegas 13. So one of those guys trades up to that 3, or if they don't, right? If they stand pat, let's say quarterback goes first 3, then the draft, like we talked about, it's Arizona and Los Angeles Chargers. Neither one of those guys are interested in a quarterback. They're not in the market for a quarterback. They have franchise QBs under big money contracts. They want to put weapons around them. So they're either going to get protection, right? Go offensive lineman, or they're going to go get a premium wide receiver, one of the big 3 receivers, Neighbors, Harrison Jr., or Adunze, right? Yeah. Then Tennessee, then the Giants. The Giants will probably grab a quarterback there. They should take a quarterback here. But they may go offensive weapon. They need receivers too. So they may take a receiver there. Tennessee is probably going to take a weapon there because they're going to let the Will Levis situation play out because arguably the top quarterbacks are off the board. Atlanta just signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year big money contract. So they're not in the market for a QB either. So you don't have to worry about that. Chicago had the first pick, and they're back again at 9. They already have their quarterback, assumingly from the first pick. So what else do they need? They've been getting a lot of protection. They've been stocking up on weapons. They'll probably go defense here. This is probably the first place that we'll see defense go is at the number 9. Then 10 is the Jets. They've got Aaron Rodgers. They're not worried about taking a quarterback in the first round. They'll probably take one in the second or third to develop behind Rodgers, with Zach Wilson approved to seek a trade elsewhere out the building. So that's probably another weapon, probably another defensive piece going there. And then, like I said, we run into that cluster of Minnesota, Denver, and Las Vegas. Whichever one of those guys doesn't trade up, right? Then that's where you'll see a run on those second tier quarterbacks. And New England could be one of those guys that's that pat that traded back into that. Right. So you have that. New Orleans isn't doing a quarterback, even though they should. Derek Carr, big money under that. They're going to need more weapons because Michael Thomas, they released him, right? They need another one.
They'll probably go receiver.
Yeah, they'll probably go receiver there. I could see that. Or maybe corner. I think that's a spot for a corner. Indianapolis, same thing. They just drafted a quarterback last year. You hope that he's coming back healthy. Anthony Richardson. Seattle. So they don't need another quarterback either. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you're going to get a run at the top three. I think top three are quarterbacks. Yeah. And then spots 11, 12, and 13 is your second run of quarterbacks, with maybe one quarterback somewhere sandwiched in between at one of these funky landing spots like the Giants or Tennessee, maybe. But outside of that, it's going to be 6 quarterbacks in the first round, and after that, nothing.
Gotcha. Now, the second part of this episode, man, and we're going to talk about people who could trade back. Now, I only have 2 teams. I see myself that actually could potentially trade out of the first round. And that's because they need more draft collateral, and there's just so many holes, Swiss cheese amounts of holes, right?
Okay.
I'm going to kick it off at number 21. My favorite squad, the Miami Dolphins. I could totally see them backing off of that. If they do back off of that, they could switch with the Green Bay Packers. They could switch with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't see them trading out of the first round, but more so just getting, hey, if they could get a random round 3 pick, why not? Get more picks in the top 100 if you can, because this is loaded in a lot of areas and not so loaded in some areas this draft. So Dolphins are my first team I see trading back. The next team that I see taking and trading back, and there's a couple, right? You look at the Packers, right? They're much more built than they are, right? Minnesota sitting there at number 3, but I am going to take and target a team that a lot of people are not really taking and considering, man, and that is none other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man.
Really?
Wow. I got mad love for Tampa, dude, but they made it to playoffs last year, man, and they lost a lot of people, and they had a lot of holes already. So if I'm them, man, I'm trying to get as much collateral as possible. Is there going to be some teams who they're not going to get a first-round pick for a little bit? They're at the end of the second round, so they're going to try to take and move up. I could definitely take and see the Buccaneers being that next squad who ultimately takes and does that, man. What are your thoughts at the end of the round, man? You see anybody training?
Yeah, as much as it's going to annoy the hell out of me, I can see my Los Angeles Rams trading out of the first round. I don't think they should. But as you guys know, or maybe you don't know, maybe it's your first time talking football in the last 5 years, but the Rams have not had a first-round draft pick since 2016, at which point they took one Jared Goff, now quarterback for the Lions. That is the last time that they actually utilized their first-round draft pick. They traded away 2 to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Jalen Ramsey, and then they traded away another 2 for now current quarterback Matthew Stafford to the Detroit Lions. So this is our first time since 2016 that we've had a first-round draft pick. As a fan, I'm excited to make the pick. I think we have a need there. I would love for us to take one of these edge rushers or one of these corners, because I don't think it's a particularly deep edge rusher draft, and I don't think it's particularly deep at corner, so I think we should stand pat. But I could also see Les Snead maneuvering back, trading possibly out of the round or to the very, very bottom of the round, trying to acquire some more day 2 picks, second and third round picks, because that's where we've made our bread and butter over the last few seasons, not having a first round. So I think that team feels very comfortable working with more ammunition in day 2. Another team that I think could trade out of the round is Dallas. And Dallas, I think Dallas has a lot of needs, but when you get down to pick 24, where they're going to be at, the name of the game for them is going to be wide receiver. And is there a wide receiver that you really love at 24 that you don't think is going to be there in the early parts of day 2? I don't think so, because like I said, you're arguing if everybody's in the same boat, right? We think that there's 3 elite tier receivers, and then we have some interesting prospects that are coming after that. But probably nobody that anybody's willing to take a first round bet on. The first, like I said, the first round, 6 to 7 of the first round picks are going to be quarterback. 3 of them are going to be wide receivers, and then there's probably going to be at least another 3 to 4 that are going to be offensive linemen, and then we'll see edge rushers and corners and probably a safeties. Like that's what the rest of that draft is going to be. I don't think Dallas has needs at really any of those positions per se. They need weapons because CeeDee Lamb can't do it by himself. They got rid of Michael Gallup, right? Tavon Austin is old. So they just no disrespect to Tavon. But that's just the thing. So I could see them getting out of the round. Interesting that you said that Tampa would get out of the round, because I also think that Tampa could get out of the round for the same reason that I think Dallas could get out of the round. What they need is receiver. They re-signed Mike Evans. I think they re-signed him to a 3-year deal. If you look at the workings of how that's structured, it's really a 2-year deal with an option to get out at the end of 3. And I don't really see them getting ready to pay Godwin absurd amounts of money. Right, I think he's on a franchise tag, so they're probably going to look for a number 2 replacement for Godwin, maybe even possibly move him by the trade deadline. I think they could find that
They got
receiver.
an older receiver group, but they're efficient too. But
Mm-hmm.
it's get ready for the future, right? Because in 2 to 3 years, you're some of these guys, other than Mike Evans, he'll
also
play forever.
I think last team that could trade out of the round. I think the Detroit Lions could trade out of the round. Because what did they lose this offseason? They lost a guard, but they immediately re-signed his replacement anyway. So Jonah Jackson goes to the Rams in free agency.
Okay.
He did not start in the playoffs for them because he was injured. And so I can't remember, forgive me, I can't remember the guard that stepped up to replace him, but they signed him to a cheaper extension than what Jonah Jackson would have demanded. So they're good on the offensive line, right? Everybody's young and cheap. They still feel good about Jared Goff, possibly an extension for him coming. They lost, what's my guy's name? I should know. He came from the Rams. But they lost one of the receivers, Josh Reynolds. He's a free agent, right? So they need another receiver. They feel they need another corner now, right? They had to release Cam Sutton with his legal issues pending right now. They're still looking for him. So they released Cam Sutton. So they need another corner. Probably all the corners that they would really, really love are probably gone by 29. And now they're dealing with their tier 2 stuff. Brad Holmes used to be a former head of scouting for the Los Angeles Rams. If you guys have been paying attention to what's been happening in Detroit since he's gotten there, he's been very, very good at the draft. But even more so, Brad Holmes specializes in finding late round, day 2, day 3 gems. He's what delivered us Cooper Kupp. Was his kind of scouting, and he's delivered plenty of players, maybe not star caliber, but starting caliber players, big contributors. Expect him to trade back because that's another team that feels probably comfortable that they could do good work on day 2, day 3.
Love it, man. Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, need you guys to comment below. Let us know your thoughts. Who do you see trading up in the draft? Who do you see trading back in the draft? And maybe there's a team that we did not cover today, or maybe you agree or disagree, whatever it may be. We'll catch you good folks in the comment section. And as always, smash that subscribe button. Give my special guest today, my co-host, Soup. Give him a follow on Twitter, on all social media platforms. And we'll see you guys next time on the Touchdown with Doug Smith. Thank you for watching another episode of the Touchdown with Doug Smith, where we have exclusive NFL content and exclusive NFL interviews. Be sure to hit that like and that subscribe button. Follow us on social media. See you on the next one.